In the vast legendarium of Middle-earth, few figures strike fear into the hearts of men like the 9 ring wraiths, the Nazgûl. These once great kings, sorcerers and warriors were reduced to shadowy servants of the Dark Lord Sauron, their humanity sacrificed for the promise of power and immortality. Of these 9 terrible beings, only one is known to us by name in Tolkien's writings. Khamûl, called the Shadow of the East, the Second Chief, and the Black Easterling. Today, we delve into everything we know about this enigmatic servant of darkness, from his origins as a mortal king to his role as Sauron's lieutenant, his hunt for the One Ring, and his ultimate fate. We'll separate canonical fact from speculation, explore his brief but memorable appearances in Peter Jackson's films, and discover why this particular Nazgûl stands apart from his 8 companions in shadow. The origins of the Shadow of the East. Khamûl was once a mortal man, an Easterling who ruled in Rhûn. He received one of the 9 rings of power from the Dark Lord Sauron, and in time he was corrupted and became one of his servants. While Tolkien tells us little about his life before corruption, we can infer from his title and later actions that he was likely a powerful ruler among the peoples of the East. The transformation from man to wraith was not immediate. Like the other recipients of the 9 rings, Khamûl would have initially experienced great power and apparent benefit from his ring. Those who used the 9 rings became mighty in their day, kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. They obtained glory and great wealth, yet it turned to their downfall. The rings granted their bearers extended life, the ability to become invisible and enhanced power, but at a terrible cost. He first appeared as one of the Nazgûl in SA 2251. By this time, the corruption was complete. What had once been a proud king of the Easterlings had become a creature of shadow, bound eternally to the will of Sauron, and sustained only by the power of his ring and the dominance of the One Ring that controlled them all. Among the 9, Khamûl held a position of particular importance. Khamûl was one of the 9 ring wraiths, second only to the Witch King himself, a rank that speaks to both his original power as a mortal king and his effectiveness as a servant of darkness. This position as Second Chief made him Sauron's most trusted lieutenant after the Witch King of Angmar. While the Witch King commanded the 9 as a whole and served as Sauron's primary general, Khamûl often operated independently, carrying out crucial missions that required both authority and competence. After the Witch King, Khamûl had the best ability to perceive the presence of the One Ring, but his power was most confused and diminished by daylight. This sensitivity to the ring would prove crucial during the hunt for Frodo Baggins, though his weakness in daylight would also prove to be a significant limitation. Lieutenant of Dol Guldur. In 2951 of the Third Age, Sauron declared himself openly to his enemies and sent Khamûl and 2 other ring wraiths to Dol Guldur, with the former taking command. This appointment marked a new phase in both Khamûl's service and Sauron's strategy for dominating Middle-earth. Dol Guldur, the Hill of Dark Sorcery in southern Mirkwood, had served as Sauron's stronghold during his time masquerading as the Necromancer. Even after the Dark Lord's return to Mordor, the fortress remained strategically vital. From Dol Guldur, Sauron could threaten the realms of Lothlorien and Thranduil's woodland kingdom, while also maintaining pressure on the northern approaches to Gondor. As commander of this fortress, Khamûl was responsible for coordinating attacks on the Free Peoples from the north and east. His forces would later assault Lothlorien multiple times during the War of the Ring, though they would ultimately fail to breach the protected realm of Galadriel and Celeborn. The choice of Khamûl for this command was no accident. His eastern origins and understanding of the peoples of Rhovanion made him ideally suited to coordinate Sauron's efforts in the region. Moreover, his rank among the Nazgûl gave him the authority needed to command not just orcs and lesser creatures, but also to coordinate with other servants of the Dark Lord. From Dol Guldur, Khamûl could maintain communication with Sauron in Barad-dûr, while also serving as a key link in the Dark Lord's intelligence network. This position would prove crucial when reports reached Sauron about a creature called Gollum, and his knowledge of a Baggins from the Shire. The hunt for the ring. The events that would lead to Khamûl's most famous actions began with the escape of Gollum from the Wood Elves of Mirkwood. On June 20th, orcs attacked the Wood Elves who held Gollum captive. Gollum escaped during the pandemonium. While this may have seemed like a minor incident, It set in motion a chain of events that would shake Middle-earth to its foundations. On July 22nd, Khamûl and the Witch King met in the Field of Celebrant, and Khamûl reported Gollum's escape. In the month following Gollum's escape, Khamûl had searched the vales of the Anduin for more hobbits, but he had found no one. The Dark Lord had learned from Gollum's earlier capture and interrogation that the One Ring was in the hands of a hobbit from a land called the Shire, but neither Sauron nor his servants knew where this Shire might be found. The search for the Shire would consume months of effort. The Nazgûl, despite their power and the terror they inspired, were operating in largely unknown territory, seeking a hidden land whose very location was a mystery to them. The Nazgûl did not find their way to the Shire until September. On September 23rd, the Nazgûl won a battle against the Rangers at Sarn Ford, and either 4 or 5 of them entered the Shire. This battle at Sarn Ford was the first clash between the servants of Sauron and the Dúnedain Rangers, who had long protected the Shire without the hobbits' knowledge. Khamûl was the wraith who pursued the hobbits to Bucklebury Ferry in the Shire, and who asked Farmer Maggot for Baggins just before Frodo Baggins left Hobbiton. This encounter with Farmer Maggot is one of the few times we see a Nazgûl interact directly with an ordinary citizen of Middle-earth, and it reveals both Khamûl's methods and limitations. The conversation with Maggot, though brief, shows us something important about how the Nazgûl operated. Rather than simply terrorizing or killing anyone they encountered, they were capable of restraint when it served their purposes. Khamûl needed information, and dead witnesses could provide none. Khamûl rode into Hobbiton, where he confronted Gaffer Gamgee and asked for a hobbit named Baggins, and the Gaffer falsely directed him to the Buckland area. This encounter in Hobbiton, speaking with Samwise Gamgee's father, represents one of the closest calls in the entire quest. Had the Gaffer been less clever or more intimidated, the hunt for the ring might have ended that very night. On September 24th, Khamûl pursued Frodo and his companions down the Stock Road and almost captured them, but they were able to hide, and Khamûl's sense of smell was not as strong in daylight. This near capture on the Stock Road demonstrates both Khamûl's effectiveness as a hunter and his crucial weakness. His power waxed with darkness and waned with daylight, a limitation that would prove decisive on multiple occasions. The pursuit through the Shire shows us Khamûl at his most dangerous. Using his enhanced senses and supernatural tracking abilities, he came closer than any other servant of Sauron to capturing the Ring-bearer before the quest had truly begun. Only the courage of simple folk like Farmer Maggot and the Gaffer, combined with Khamûl's daylight weakness, prevented disaster. Beyond the Shire. After the hobbits escaped the Shire, the hunt continued across the wild lands of Eriador. The Nazgûl regrouped and continued their pursuit, eventually tracking Frodo and his companions to the ancient watchtower of Weathertop, Amon Sul. While Tolkien doesn't specifically identify which Nazgûl participated in the assault at Weathertop, we know that multiple ring-wraiths were present, and given Khamûl's role in the hunt and his rank among the Nine, it's likely he was there when Frodo foolishly put on the ring and made himself visible to their enhanced sight. The attack at Weathertop nearly succeeded. Only Aragorn's timely intervention, wielding fire, one of the few things the Nazgûl truly feared, allowed the hobbits to escape, though not before the Witch King's Morgul blade wounded Frodo and began the process of transforming him into a wraith. The chase continued to the ford of Bruinen, where Elrond's power protected the borders of Rivendell. Here, the Nazgûl made their final attempt to capture the ring before it could reach the safety of the last homely house. The flood that swept away the Nine, enhanced by Elrond's power and given form by Gandalf's magic, temporarily dispersed the Nazgûl and forced them to return to Mordor to take new form. The War of the Ring. When the Nazgûl returned, they came in forms more terrible than before, mounted on flying creatures that struck fear into all who saw them. Khamûl also appeared in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields with the other Nazgûl, mounted on his fell beast and killing Gondor's soldiers at the beginning of the battle. The use of the winged mounts, the fell beasts, represented a significant escalation in the war. No longer bound to earthbound horses, the Nazgûl could now strike anywhere, bringing terror from the skies and moving with a speed that horses could never match. The Nazgûl took part in the siege of Minas Tirith and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, where the Lord of the Nazgûl perished on March 15th, 3019. Khamûl most likely became the leader of the Nazgûl at that time. The death of the Witch King at the hands of Éowyn and Merry represented a crucial turning point, not just in the battle, but in the hierarchy of the Nazgûl themselves. As the second chief, Khamûl would naturally have assumed command of the remaining 8 Nazgûl. This promotion, however, came at the worst possible time for the forces of darkness. The Battle of the Pelennor Fields was turning against Mordor. Aragorn had revealed himself as the rightful king, and unknown to all, Frodo and Sam were making their way toward Mount Doom. At the Battle of the Morannon, the Nazgûl flew above the battlefield. When Frodo claimed the ring at Mount Doom, Sauron summoned the Nazgûl to seize him. They raced to the mountain, but Gollum fell into the cracks of Doom with the ring. Mount Doom erupted, and their Khamûl, along with the other Nazgûl, was engulfed in flames and destroyed. This final flight to Mount Doom represents both the ultimate failure and the inevitable fate of the Nazgûl. For all their power, for all their terror, they were ultimately creatures sustained by the very ring they sought to recover. When Gollum fell into the lava with the One Ring, the source of their unnatural existence was destroyed, and they were consumed in the eruption that followed. In Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings film trilogy, Khamûl is shown briefly, speaking to Farmer Maggot, who directs him onward to Hobbiton, where one Baggins resides. Later, the hobbits evade Farmer Maggot, but Frodo senses a presence and tells his friends to get off the road. While Khamûl is never identified by name in the films, his presence is felt in several key scenes. The encounter with Farmer Maggot, though brief, captures the essence of his character: methodical, intimidating, but not needlessly destructive. He seeks information and is willing to show a form of restrained courtesy to get it. Hiding behind a tree, the hobbits hush as Khamûl approaches, catching their scent. As the four stay quiet, Merry throws a sack of vegetables behind the rider's horse, mistracting Khamûl and allowing the hobbits to escape. This scene on the stock road effectively demonstrates both his supernatural hunting abilities and the limitations that daylight imposed upon his powers. In the Hobbit film trilogy, the 9 ringwraiths emerge at the summons of the necromancer, who is revealed to be Sauron. Though this portrayal differs significantly from Tolkien's writings about the Nazgûl's activities during this period. In The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies, Khamûl and the other 8 ringwraiths engage the White Council in battle, with Khamûl wearing spectral Easterling armor. This appearance in the Battle of the Five Armies, while not canon to Tolkien's writings, provides a visual representation of Khamûl's origins as an Easterling king. The spectral armor suggests the pride and martial prowess he would have possessed in life, now corrupted and turned to shadow. Throughout Jackson's films, the Nazgûl are portrayed as figures of pure terror, cloaked in black, faceless beneath their hoods, and emanating an aura of supernatural dread. While individual Nazgûl are rarely distinguished visually, except for the Witch King's crown, their collective presence serves as one of the film's most effective sources of horror. The decision not to name individual Nazgûl in the films, apart from the Witch King, reflects both the limited screen time available and the nature of these characters. They have largely lost their individual identities, becoming extensions of Sauron's will rather than independent beings. The significance of Khamûl. The fact that Tolkien chose to name only one of the Nazgûl, besides the Witch King, whose name we never learn, is significant. He was the only ringwraith whose name was given by J.R.R. Tolkien among the 9, suggesting that Khamûl retained more of his individual identity than his companions, or perhaps that his role in the hunt for the ring was significant enough to warrant specific mention. This naming also serves a literary purpose. By giving us one named Nazgûl besides their leader, Tolkien prevents these creatures from becoming completely faceless and interchangeable. Khamûl represents the tragedy of the Nazgûl. He was once a person with a name, a kingdom, and presumably people who looked up to him. That name survived his corruption serves as a reminder of what was lost. Khamûl's origins as an Easterling also serve to expand the scope of Sauron's corruption beyond the realms familiar to readers of The Lord of the Rings. While most of the action in the main narrative takes place in the west of Middle-earth, Khamûl reminds us that Sauron's influence extended far beyond Mordor, reaching into distant lands and corrupting kings whose very names have been lost to history. His title, Shadow of the East, works on multiple levels. It references both his geographical origins and his role as the extension of Sauron's dark power into the eastern regions of Middle-earth. From Dol Guldur, he casts Sauron's shadow across Mirkwood, Rhovanion, and beyond. Legacy and lessons. Khamûl's story serves as a cautionary tale about the seductive nature of power and the price of ambition. Like the other bearers of the Nine Rings, he was likely approached with offers that seemed beneficial: extended life, enhanced power, the ability to protect and expand his kingdom. The corruption came gradually, so slowly that by the time he realized what was happening, it was far too late to turn back. The rings offered everything that a mortal king might desire, but the cost was ultimately everything that made him human. Power, immortality, and dominion, all at the price of his soul, his freedom, and ultimately his very identity. Khamûl's long service to Sauron, spanning thousands of years from the Second Age through the end of the Third Age, demonstrates the persistence and patience of evil in Tolkien's world. Unlike the quick victories sought by more impulsive villains, Sauron and his servants were willing to work across centuries and millennia to achieve their goals. This long view made them incredibly dangerous. Kingdoms rose and fell, heroes lived and died, but Khamûl and his fellow Nazgûl endured, waiting for their master's return and ready to serve when called upon. They represent evil as a corrupting, patient force that outlasts individual resistance and waits for moments of weakness. Ironically, Khamûl's ultimate failure came not from great armies or mighty heroes, but from the small acts of courage performed by ordinary folk. Farmer Maggot's misdirection, the gaffer's false information, and Merry's quick thinking with a bag of vegetables. These small deceptions and acts of courage proved more effective at thwarting the Shadow of the East than all the swords and spells of greater heroes. This theme runs throughout Tolkien's work, the power of small acts to change the course of great events. Khamûl, for all his power and supernatural abilities, was ultimately undone by hobbits who simply refused to be intimidated or helpful to evil. In the end, Khamûl's story is both a tragedy and a warning. Once a king with his own name, kingdom, and people, he became a nameless terror serving an even greater darkness. His hunger for power and extended life ultimately cost him everything that had made that life worth living. Yet his ultimate destruction reminds us that no evil, no matter how ancient or powerful, is permanent. The same ring that gave Khamûl his terrible unlife also proved to be his undoing. When that ring was destroyed, the Shadow of the East finally found the release from his torment that he had been unable to seek for himself. Khamûl's name appears in Tolkien's own notes, published in Unfinished Tales, a fitting epitaph for a character who, despite his significant role in the great events of the Third Age, remains largely hidden in shadow. But that single mention, that preservation of his name, serves as a reminder that even the servants of darkness were once people with names, hopes, and dreams before they chose the path that led to their corruption. The Shadow of the East has fallen, but his story remains, a warning about the seductive nature of power, and a reminder that even the mightiest servants of evil can be overcome by the courage of the small and humble. Thanks for joining us in this deep dive tonight. Until next time, stay safe and stay by the fire.